Hi everybody, my name's John Franklin from EASA's Together for Safety initiative, and welcome to our next edition of Conversation Aviation. And what we're going to be talking about today is putting your staff and their well-being at the heart of a people-centred ramp-up, and this is the next part of this Be Ready section of the ramp-up campaign that we launched back in May. First of all, traditional style, we'll get it right this time I think, is to introduce my two hosts. So can you just say hi?
Yeah, hello everyone, my name's Chris, working with John. I've been working with John for a while now on Together for Safety themes, and working out how we're going to do these sessions and make them run smoothly, so hopefully they're getting a bit smoother as we go. Got a background in safety, human factors, and really, people-centric management systems that really look at those issues. So I'm really fascinated to hear what Catherin and Cate have got in terms of their experience and knowledge and what they've been experiencing over the last period. So, hello.
Hi everybody.
Great, thanks. And Claudio?
Yeah, thanks for having us on again, and happy to be here. I'm Claudio, I'm the head of the TC Alliance, a collaborative group of aviation trainers and consultants that work collectively for aviation safety. And happy to be here and discuss about the next steps and what we can actually have as tangible outcomes for a safe operational environment.
And actually, Claudio, I'm thinking suddenly, before we introduce the guests, it's perhaps worth mentioning that this week we're going to be launching the human factors package of training material.
Yeah, so over the last couple of months.
So that will go online this week.
Over the last couple of months is something we've
go on,
been
sorry.
working
Here we
on.
go.
Yeah, we have this recording problem sometimes. But yeah, over the last couple of months, Together for Safety and the TC Alliance have been working collectively for creating a kind of tangible outcome for human factors. And it's not human factors as what we traditionally think of human factors, but more of a, do we understand each other, and as we get back to work, and do we understand what each other are going through and all the different environments? Because typically human factors has been specific to a niche. Human factors for maintenance, human factors for pilots, human factors for different areas. Now we're talking about it from a complete organisational point of view, and how we can actually understand and help each other. And to talk about that more today is Cate and Catherin. So looking forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, and that's a great opportunity to move on then to ask our two guests to introduce themselves. So, Cate, maybe you could go first.
Thank you, John. Yes, my name is Cate Bichara. I work for Skyguide, the Swiss air navigation service provider. I'm head of diversity and inclusion, and also the social dialogue manager for the Functional Airspace Bloc Europe Central, in other words, FABEC, amongst other things that I do. And I must say that everything that has to do with psychological safety is very much up my street.
Fantastic, thanks for joining us. And we're also joined today by Catherin. Catherin, can you introduce yourself?
I have a company called Unitycare that developed itself by demand at the Cologne-Bonn airport. This is why I'm here. On Natural Way, I'm a naturopath, or working as a naturopath and physiotherapist. And I have got a lot to do with people at work and all the physical and mental impacts they bring to work. And so we developed a program at the Cologne-Bonn airport that I'm very happy to share with you guys here.
Fantastic, thanks for joining us, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that and having you talk about that. We were really excited. We've been doing a lot, as hopefully a lot of people know, looking at providing wellbeing resources and helping organisations kind of think about how they might implement well-being initiatives and look at psychological safety, and to find that there was something, the work you were doing literally just down the road from us here at EASA at Cologne Airport, it was hugely exciting for us, so it's great to have you on. We'll also be joined in a separate segment that we'll add on to the end of this conversation by Sanda, who'll join us from Air Baltic, so it'll be great to have that additional discussion at the end with her. Unfortunately, she had something come up, so she couldn't join us for the discussion live. And perhaps just to kind of get into the topic now, so when we launched the ramp-up campaign, with all the well-being work we were doing, we felt we were trying to find a way of really making this whole discussion about people and well-being kind of at the heart of the campaign. And in the end, kind of one of the three parts of the Be Ready segment of the campaign, when we launched it in May, we termed putting your staff and their well-being at the heart of a people-centred ramp-up. And I know we've been doing lots of discussion about this during COVID and throughout the past year and a half, but actually there's a lot of fantastic work, as we'll hear about, going on before the campaign, I think, before COVID and before the campaign, and I think actually it's great to share those stories as well. And Kate, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the things you've been doing in Switzerland and in the wider ATM community on this side.
Certainly, John. So, yes, well, with regards to COVID and the ramp up after COVID, Skyguide has been very active in promoting well-being. We've had a series of webinars for management to know how to deal with, how to help people back into the office or back into their workplace, with top management statements that are very clear, saying that well-being is important. Psychological safety is very important. This was also the case before. Skyguide has always been very, very active and proactive in all of the just culture environment. Sometimes the difficulty can be with regards to implementation level, where people don't really understand what touchy-feely stuff is about in the hard, cold world of technology and aviation. So here there is quite a lot of education to be done with a number of areas and a number of people. Here I can also see a link to diversity and inclusion, where one can only really be heard if one dares speak up, even if one is different or says something different. So getting an understanding of all that and being able to bring it forward is really the important thing for us, and implementing it at grassroots level so that people really get a feel for it and go along with it.
And I think one of the things particularly we've been talking about through all these sessions has been the conversation is to normalise conversations, whether it's talking about diversity, inclusion, or well-being in general. Is that something you found the more you work in this area and the more people talk about it, that becomes easier? Do you see that happening?
Very definitely. There has to be a top-down impulse, let's put it that way, or trigger, but then the more we talk about it, the more we communicate, the more we make it available for the layman so that everybody can get their hands on it and actually get a feel for it, see how it really does work, is very much something that helps the conversations and helps mature the whole idea of psychological safe space, well-being, diversity and inclusion, just culture. I put all of those things pretty much into the same bag. They're really trying to achieve safety. They're trying to achieve a good work environment, and that can only promote a better company, a better aviation chain as well.
Okay, I'm interested. My background is in human factors in management systems as well. And just culture is one of the key topics around, reporting errors, mistakes, but also, behaviours and things like that. And it's one thing to see in a management system and training being done and policies being written, but there's another thing is how it percolates down to the front line, to people who are actually required or encouraged to use those systems. And there has been variable results in terms of human factors and just culture and reporting and self-promotion reporting. Is it early days in this sort of different niche of psychological safety, or is it taking off pretty well in terms of?
I think that if we talk about the front-end operator, it's taking off quite well. There is also the regulation that has really helped that, the 376. Yeah. I claim, and this is personal, that you can't have subcultures in a company, and that just culture should permeate throughout the whole company, and that safety is the business of absolutely everybody. And in that sense, there are still quite a lot of conversations that definitely need to be had, particularly in an office environment where we generally, and I'm not just talking about Skyguide here, but one still sees the idea that the manager sees the person come in, makes a mistake, and it's because they've been bad. Bad, whatever bad means. Whereas, and I think it was the CEO of Pepsi Cola who said, you should always go in thinking that the person has done their best and they came into work to do a good job. Now, that is a fundamental for just culture itself. However, it very rarely gets applied in the office environment. And if we have it in the office environment, we create psychological safety because people feel far more inclined to put their hand up and say, well, actually, okay, so I made that decision to the best of my knowledge at that particular point in time. What went wrong so that I don't make a mistake again, which is a very difficult conversation to have if you've just had an ear bashing from your boss who's told you how wrong you've been because you made that decision and you should have known better because, etc., 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 which gives a whole different, fairly toxic environment in the latter case.
So it sounds like a similar challenge to the earlier in regulation around just culture, and the cultural changes and adjustments need to be made to make it really effective top to bottom, as you were saying.
I'd maybe like to add that the fundamental difference between just culture in the office and just culture for the front-end operator is that the mistakes can show up quite a lot later. There can be a time lag. When you turn an aircraft to the left and it should have been to the right, usually you see that fairly immediately. When the pilot climbs instead of descending, you see that immediately. But when you're in an office and you've made a mistake in an Excel spreadsheet, or you've put in the wrong flights into your travel request, even, for example, that can suddenly it can take 6 months to show up, and so people can hide it more easily, and you really need a far more psychologically safe space for people to put their hand up and say, well, okay, so I did make a mistake and it was 6 months ago. Don't beat me up about it, because we still need to make sure that we don't go ahead and make the same mistakes.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, John.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it, is helping organisations. So we see a similar thing where the organisations quite often, particularly now with COVID, post-COVID, with minimal resources, there's a lot of the challenges. How do you implement these things at a practical level with an organisation? Actually, maybe now's a good time to ask Catherin, perhaps, to talk a little bit about what you were doing at the work you've been doing at Cologne-Bonn Airport, and kind of how that supported an organisation implement something at a practical level for people, individual workers in lots of different parts of the airport. Maybe you can share a little bit about your experience with this.
The first and most important thing is that the old CEO was very interested in people and people health. So he was like a guy who had a true purpose, who was interested in the whole picture of aviation and everybody taking his part in the whole game. So by that, he was truly caring for people. So you can't learn that, or you can't teach that. You have to be that in particular. So this is why at that time I got into the airport, mainly for the loaders. So the loaders came in with their back pain, knee pain, all these things. And I think like 3 minutes later, they started to complain about the chief talking too harsh with them. Loaders are super, super tender. Like these tough guys, with these muscle packages. But when they start talking about what really touches them, they are super sensitive about explaining what's going on, especially if the team is not working well. So by that time, everybody at the airport got known that these sessions were held. So more employees came to get sessions. By that, I needed to get more therapists, as the request was there. So the demand always came from within. And that is what made the business so successful indeed, because by that the whole manager team got into the clinic, and they complained about their problems with the staff members. So at that point we started to do mediation as well, as we saw that was the main problem. If you have physical pain, before you get physical pain, usually there's a disharmony, the disharmony between two people. And the most important thing at that point was that people keep being transparent about their feelings. And what we observed is that staff members like loaders and the practical people, so to speak, were very onto it. And when we came to the managers and the leadership, they were very, very heady. So we really had to work on getting the people into their body. And that was the good point we had. We could do really physical body work, so that people could just get aware of the tension they have. because most of the managers are really functioning, like doing, working. They don't get that. Their shoulders are like that. So they just needed to get aware of what's going on. So we started with a lot of one-on-one sessions, and by that we could then expand on workshops on different topics. But everybody had a sense of his body to bring to the workshop, and that felt like the big success we had at that time.
And I always found it really interesting the way that you combined that kind of the physical well-being element with the mental well-being at the individual and then the team level, and created, as Cate was talking about, this kind of psychological safety kind of part of the system. And Claudio, I know you've been talking to a lot of people, a lot of different organisations. What's the kind of things you've been seeing, and how does that relate to what Cate and Catherin were talking about?
I've been seeing a lot of the same thing, and it's always exactly like Catherin just said there. People want to actually talk about what their issues are. They just don't feel as if a lot of times they have a safe environment to actually do that. And Kate's brought this up numerous times when we've had some great discussions in the past as well, whereby you're always within your same environment, so you don't feel as if you can bring it up to your supervisor or to your boss. And if there's infighting within the organisation, if it'll come out in some other way and it'll be taken in a negative sense. And so when this is maybe like something we can take away from this, is if we can actually go away from that environment and talk about it in a different environment, whether that's colleagues in a completely different department, or like Catherin, where if it's a different company coming in, as long as we actually bring it up and actually have that mediation element to it, then it's something that we can actually work on. And that's something that I've especially brought away from this topic and this conversation today, is that we are experiencing the same problems over and over again, and it's just about how we can actually deal with that. And a lot of the advice from Cate and Catherin, I think, has been absolutely fantastic, and in fact we'll be putting a lot of that into the human factors course that we're going to be doing with Together for Safety. In fact, Kate's already implemented a lot on the unconscious bias and in that section of it, so we will be implementing some tangible outcomes, hopefully, that we can hand over.
Generally, the topic, I'm not that not that expert on anything actually, but in this particular speciality, how would you say this has been taken up more broadly around the industry as a whole? I've heard people like Paul Cullen speak on the subject, and there's been this sort of variable take up, corporately with organisations across the different sectors of whether it's commercial flight, whatever. How have you seen that? I guess a question for Cate maybe, or Catherin as well, I'm not sure, but what's your perception of how well what the take-up's like?
Maybe I could not answer your question, Chris, immediately, and just tell you a little bit of a story about the social dialogue I do in FABIC. Because when I started off in 2014, it was very much a them and us. Managers down one side of the room in ties and black suits, and the unions down the other side of the room, and 20 union reps, 7 or 8 managers, and they were not going to communicate. And I'm busy preparing my 5th tripartite meeting with the FABIC states, FABIC ANSPs. They're asking for it even in COVID times. We couldn't let go of it during 2020 because everybody wanted these meetings. And I had to ask myself what happened in between and why. And it is about creating a psychologically safe space. And what I've done is I've created an environment where, to create a safe space, you need to create trust, which is very delicate, which takes time to build. And you need empathy. So you need to spend time in the other person's shoes and imagine what it's like to be the manager with your shareholders, or to be the union rep with your members. You need to accept the other person. That's really, really important. Accept that they're different. Except that they have a different home, different environment, different situation, different abilities. Here we come back to the diversity and inclusion as well. Therefore, different points of view. You don't necessarily need to agree. You need mutual respect, and that comes from the empathy and the acceptance, which then becomes socially sustainable. So it's sort of a circular vision, which I call STEAMs. because that's the acronym of all those key words I've got in there. And speaking at the right level, so speaking to the CEOs on a strategic level, to the experts on a more detailed level, so you feel heard, also helps with the empathy. So I've got a 3-layer structure. And that is an example of success in a psychologically safe space that I've created in an aviation environment over 6 states and 7 ANSPs. I don't know if it's a good example across the industry, but I feel that it's something that certainly is worthwhile promoting to get other people to see the advantages of that and to be able to implement it.
That's very impressive in terms of the coverage. And is it too early to look at the benefits of it? So I think one of the hard sells in the early days in the maintenance realm of human factors, as you said, in the hard technical environment of aircraft maintenance versus the softer side of behaviours, reporting, values, and that sort of thing, it was quite hard to convince people of the benefits of that, other than the regulations said you should have a just culture and reporting and investigation and feedback. What is the ROI like in terms of proving? Is it still trying to prove a negative, that or conundrum?
I think that it's certainly proved itself positive. FABEC has to have social dialogue because it's there in the terms of reference, but we've moved way beyond that now. Because people are asking for these meetings, they're asking for the discussion, there is better understanding of the other person's side. One notable moment was when we had the network manager at one of the meetings, and there was suddenly an understanding of what the front-end operator for the air traffic controller was to the network manager and vice versa. Which is an incredible return on investment for an entity like FABEC, which allows them to say, well, this is what we do. There's a better understanding of the work, of the job, of what we're trying to achieve, how we introduce as ANSPs safety into the aviation chain, because that's what we produce is indeed safety, and then efficiency, obviously, and capacity. And every time we speak on a thematic topic like safety or capacity, we get both sides of the story. So we get the we get the front end operator's side, but we also get the management side, and they can understand each other now. So that is really a very good return on investment as far as I can see, and confirmed by all the FABEC.
Very good.
And just to expand on what Cate shared, it's okay. Just to expand on what Cate shared.
Yeah, go for it.
It's super cool, as what I observed is treating people equal is the most important part, and also to remember everyone why he's there, why he's working at the airport. So it's like a universal law. So when you bring back the people to purpose, then you bring them back to self-responsibility. And that's the most important key. When you go there, then you can combine it with the body, and then you have a whole body mindedness, something like all encompassing. This is what I like the most. And so to your question, Chris, this is for every company. As Unitycare developed at the Cologne-Bonn airport, but is now implemented into other companies as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. And thanks very much. I think that was a really fantastic discussion. I think we've got to a good kind of 25 minutes now, and I think it was really interesting to get those thoughts, and it'll be interesting to get the views and the experience that Sanda's got from an airline perspective from Air Baltic to follow this. And I'd just like to thank the both of you for your time and joining in this initial discussion, and just sharing those thoughts on what practical implementation starts to look like, and helps to share these case studies, etc., with other organisations. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having more discussions with you both, and with Chris and Claudio at the next session later on. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you very much for having us.
Bye.
Hi everybody, and here for the second part of the session that we started with Cate and Catherin earlier on in the cast. We're now going to look at the situation and the subject of putting our staff at the heart of a people-centred ramp-up from an airline perspective, and I'm joined by a fabulous guest. Sanda, can you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you very much, John. It's great to be here. My name is Sanda. I am from Air Baltic. I am HR business partner responsible of flight operations department, and also being highly involved in well-being matters and, in a way, advocacy throughout the company at Air Baltic.
And interestingly, we first saw some of the work you were doing with Air Baltic, promoting the well-being programs and things that you were doing quite a few months ago now on LinkedIn, on the company social media, and it was really exciting for us to see, an airline kind of promoting these kinds of activities. Maybe you can explain a little bit about the work you've been doing in terms of peer support and well-being within the airline.
Sure. We did understand quite early on last year, when the pandemic really hit the industry especially, but everyone else around us as well, that people need support, and that we are in a position to provide something to them to feel better, that we have resources to let them understand what is happening and what they are going through. It was shortly before the unfortunate event, if we call it like that, when we had to say goodbye to a lot of our colleagues who we were not able to keep in the company due to the downsizing. We understood that people who stayed in company, that they have a lot of issues to deal with, that they have hard emotions, that they are now asked to work remotely, and they are dealing as well at some time with guilt, feeling guilty that they have stayed in the company when someone else has left the company. They feel scared of all the uncertainty that happens around them, and we decided that we should support our people. What we started with webinars for our people managers. They were led by our internal mental health specialist, who told what this whole pandemic is bringing up in us, what kind of effects it has on us as human beings, and how probably manager could spot that some of their subordinates are going through the hard time, and how they could support them. And also we put online a video lecture, where as well each employee still has an access to it and can watch it and understand all these kind of different emotions that we still go through every day. And then together with that, we started to build our peer support program, and understanding how much the pandemic influenced all of us, we decided the peer support program is a great tool to provide not only to pilots, which was mandatory at that time, but also initially to our cabin crew and technicians, and by this time now we have opened the program to all of our employees. So anyone who is having some kind of life stress issues or even mental well-being issues can turn to our peer supporters and get assistance going through their issues, or just validating that how you feel is normal and you have to go through this, and we are here for you to help if that's
and has it helped to normalise those kinds of conversations about mental well-being, or is it, I guess it takes time to build the trust and all of those things?
It does take time, and I must admit we are currently still, I would say, in the phase when we just build the trust, when we open the communication about these matters, because I believe aviation, it's industry which historically has been place where there is no place for emotion, where talking about your mental health is in a way taboo, because if you mention something, then that might raise problems, maybe in your career or something like that. And because we build the program ourselves, it's being run by our internal people who are voluntary peer supporters, but we still feel that people are not very easy accepting and saying out loud these things, that they still sometimes do not understand themselves and what they are going through. So we are still working with opening up this conversation, normalizing this conversation, and normalizing that actually it's a strength that you come and ask for support, rather than if you hide and you try to pretend that you are all strong and can deal with everything yourself.
And have you found, from a management perspective, I guess you've had to work quite hard as well, trying to, getting wider support for the implementation and having the managers support and help their own staff as well?
Yes, of course, we are all going through the same problems. So also managers need some help, but since they understood a little bit better the situation when they had these webinars, it's easier for them to as well admit that even they are not, robots that can go on without feeling something. And if we talk about the higher management, we have had this support since the beginning, that we can give this kind of assistance to our employees, that we can spend our resources, human resources or financial resources, to really implement this program and to provide a platform for our employees where they can get this assistance. So management has been very supportive, and it was management's decision that we have to open the program for everyone, not only for our safety sensitive personnel.
And interestingly, when we were talking yesterday for the first part of the podcast, particularly the situation that Catherin from Cologne-Bonn Airport, in the project she did at Cologne-Bonn Airport, it was not just where we talk a lot about the workers and the team level, but then throughout the organisation from top to bottom, that conversation. And then also that what you say there about the leaders and the managers equally having access to these kinds of programmes being really important. I think I'm really excited by the whole kind of company ethos that you've built in what you've done. In terms of what have been the biggest lessons, I guess, if there are other people in your situation trying to build their own programs, is there like one or two main lessons that you've learned already from what you've been doing?
One maybe which I would say is definitely a lesson that we still in a way try to learn and understand, is really how to put more our peer supporters into the center of the program and get them being more of the ambassadors of the program. They were ready to be a part of it, to give the support, and maybe they did not understand at the beginning that they will have to do more work in promoting, more work in explaining to people these issues, and opening the communication. So that would be one thing that as we see, we do need our peer supporters to be more of visible ambassadors, and that's what we work on right now. Probably that's what we were lacking a little bit at the beginning. I would say that's the greatest lesson for us so far, and that we are trying now to build on top and trying to compensate.
Fantastic, and thanks for that insight. Hopefully for everybody watching and listening, it's really useful to kind of be inspired, hopefully, by what's possible, what we've been talking about throughout this podcast. As we were talking about right at the start of the cast, this week we're also going to launch a human factors support package that also has some information on peer support, and hopefully we can do more sharing case studies. And Sanda, huge thanks for joining us on this discussion, and hopefully everybody will carry on, and Sanda will be joining us for the live discussion next week as well, where we'll be kind of summarising the Be Ready part of the campaign and kind of bringing all of this conclusion to this discussion to a bit of a conclusion, and hopefully moving on and seeing how we can all collectively learn the lessons of the past few months as we move forward into hopefully continual improvement in aviation. Fantastic. Thanks very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.